Hey, I'm Taylor Dorsett, and this is the Professional Technical Interviewee. Technical interviews are hard, and every company does them differently. On this show, I interview engineering leaders to see what they look for in technical candidates, and then they perform a real technical interview with me. I hope you enjoy.
And welcome back. We are going to move into the interview portion. So I know typically you do a take-home interview for the technical piece. So we were going to do something more behavioral, kind of simulating like this initial phone call you mentioned earlier of kind of what you take people through on this first round call.
Yeah, that sounds good. We'll hop into it as if I'd be interviewing you. So cool. Let's say you're coming in and applying for a full stack role. I'm looking over your resume. I'm trying to see relevant technology that you're using that that we utilize as well. And you're in Ruby, and so we use a lot of Ruby at ReviewTrackers. So I'm going to dig into that. So cool. I'd say like, okay, can you tell me about your current role and, what you've been focusing on in the last few months. And so, go for it.
Yeah. So I'm engineer 2 at Home Chef right now. We use Ruby on Rails. We use React on the front end, as well as traditional JavaScript and a lot of like HAML. It's kind of some interesting HAML tailwinds mashup stuff right now. So we're converting a lot of that into React. And my team specifically works on, it's a CX team, which we take everything from when you first land on the Home Chef page until you've actually signed up. So it's kind of our homepage, our sign up funnel, and then everything kind of in between that process. We do a little bit of stuff outside of it, but that's kind of our bread and butter.
Okay, very cool. Can you tell me about what your team makeup is? The titles on your unit and any like other business members that you may engage with on a regular basis?
Yeah, so I think we have, I'm going to get in trouble if I don't know exactly, but like seven-ish people on our team, with, I would say, 5 of those being engineers, and then an engineering manager. Actually, we just added another one, so like 8. So we've got an engineering manager, we've got 1 senior engineer, we've got another SE2 beside myself, and then 2 SE1s. And we had a tech lead up until about maybe a month ago, and she just left. So that was in place. We also interact really heavily with design and product. So we have a designer, one specifically who works with our team very frequently. Like she's in our stand-ups, our product managers in our stand-ups as well. I work very closely with her. And then we have a couple other design and product people that bounce in and out depending on the specific role or project.
Okay. And can you tell me about how you get feedback currently?
Question. So regular one-on-ones with my manager, as far as like I would say interpersonal and like goals type of feedback. I also have one-on-ones with our director who oversees all of CX. We have a couple other pods within the CX teams. And then as far as like code feedback, it's kind of interesting. We don't really have QA teams at Home Chef. But we do code reviews. Every basically PR that's going to get merged in has to have 3 different approvals or approvals with on the code. So we're all basically overlooking everyone else's code very regularly, and those approvals come from within our team. So it's an interesting process, and I kind of like it rather than like basically sending something off to QA and saying good luck and tell me if there's anything wrong. We're like I feel like it makes us a little bit more responsible for our code, because it's not someone else on a different team that's dealing with any bugs. It's like, oh, Jimmy's got to look over this, right? And then Jimmy's going to Slack me, if something's wrong, and then we'll go through and fix it, right?
Yeah, that's interesting. It sounds somewhat similar to ours in some respects, so that's good. Can you tell me about the testing strategy that you follow at Home Chef? Yeah,
so we do some automated tests, or I would say decent amount of automated tests. Basically anything back-end focused is going to have automation tests using like RSpec. And we write those tests. We're certainly not test first or test-driven development, but anything that's going to be touch the back end or be like API focused, we're going to write tests for. And that's something that I think our team is trying to embrace a little bit more, and something that like I don't have a really strong background in testing. So it's been an interesting experience. I did a little bit of testing in my last role. My first role, I would say AD testing was my wife, who used to be a QA engineer, would call just clicking around a bit, so trying to get from just clicking around a bit to actually using RSpec regularly and thinking of that first.
Okay. So I guess from what I understood, you do a lot of integration testing from what you mentioned. Are you actually going in and doing like unit testing on methods that you're writing?
Yes. If I'm writing new methods, then I would also write those tests for that.
Okay. And then what about end-to-end tests using like a framework like Capybara or Selenium or something like that?
No, we're not. If we do any of that, I don't do that, but I don't think we really do that as a company.
Okay. And then to get a sense of like what like the full breadth of your role is, are you deploying yourself, or is there a team that's doing that? If you could talk through that, that'd be great.
Yeah, so we're actually hosted on Heroku, which is kind of nice. I hadn't worked with Heroku in like a large scale production environment before, so it's been fun, and I feel like it's pretty user friendly. So it's a little scary because we all have the ability to push, to prod, and it's a pretty straightforward process. Basically, we merge stuff in on GitHub, and then once the build's complete, we're able to push that straight from our own local machines. So we're handling that. We have kind of Slack channels to organize that to make sure that nothing's being, nothing's being done that would prevent some type of or cause some type of issue once something was deployed. But it's pretty smooth working with Heroku, and we have a bunch of different environments if we need them. I would say that we also have these kind of cool review environments where basically you can spin your branch up as a review branch, and then people can test that without having to pull down your branch or anything within their code, which I think is nice.
Is that in Heroku, or is that like EKS or something that you're spinning up?
Good question. I believe it's in Heroku.
Okay, interesting.
Yeah, I would have to look into that more, but I think it's in Heroku. It's actually, I don't know exactly how it works, but it's really nice and something I am curious about how we do it.
Is it a monolith or is it a microservice architecture?
A monolith.
Okay. I think that would make more sense in Heroku then. Well, that's really neat. And then next, after getting a good sense of the environment that you're working in, I would ask why you're leaving your current role, and things there. I'm looking for if you're in a conflict with someone, and sure, if you've tried to what you've done to try to like get past that conflict, and if
sure,
it is like I got mad at this person and that's why I'm leaving, then that's usually a really big red flag, because sure, that's going to happen at any job. But we'll go there, then we'll go into like, why are you looking, or what's important for you in your next opportunity? And so then people usually talk about learning and different tech they want to get into, but there's some red flags that can be communicated in that, but usually that's what is discussed. And then we open it up to questions about the company. And I mentioned earlier about this thing I've been experimenting with in showing our product off, and I'll just do that real quick, which is pretty cool. So can you see it all right?
Yeah.
Great. So sometimes what will lead into a conversation here is like, how are teams broken up? And so then I'll say something like, well, let me show you our product, and then I'll show you how it's kind of divvied up between the groups. Mm-hmm. So this is our product. You land on this homepage. There's a bunch of metrics here, and it shows, it even gets into some of like the NLP stuff we're doing. So this is primarily an account around restaurants, and you've got some categorization here. And then specifically some keywords that this business is doing really well in and not doing so well in across different review mentions. Then you can drill into the reviews specifically and There's one here left on Yelp on a Culver's 1-star review. We're seeing here that, there's items here that are pulled out that are identified as negative or positive, and they can be abstracted. And then you can tag reviews, you can respond to reviews, and you can write internal notes.
Oh, interesting. Is this the view that a business or a customer of yours would see?
Yep, exactly.
Yeah,
this is what a customer would see logging in. And you can click on this and then go to the review directly on, the source that it was left. Then, we've got keywords page, like drilling more down into specific items that are, talked about in reviews. Mm-hmm. Then we've got this tool that you can solicit your customers for reviews with. And so I think I mentioned this earlier, but you can email, SMS campaigns, kiosk, you have a landing page, or like QR codes that lead to a landing page. And so essentially businesses will send this to customers after they have an experience in their place of business, and then try to solicit feedback.
This is what PetSmart sends me all the time when I buy a chew toy and they say, "What do you review it?"
Yeah. Pretty similar to that. So then we've got a couple other tools here. So we can get into like how a business is performing against, your other locations or even competitors relevant to your business. And then this is a tool that is actually used for selling oftentimes, but can also be kind of like an interesting executive overview of like how your business has been performing over a course of time. And so sometimes our sales team has like generated these like scorecards where they'll say like, hey, these are some insights about your business. We think that you could be a little bit better about responding to your reviews, and you're not getting a whole lot of feedback. And also you're getting dinged on Coors Light and expensive. So it's kind of an interesting thing. And then I mentioned this about reviews being used as a marketing tool. So we've got this business as a customer of ours, Taco Time Canada, and they're using this widget on their website to use reviews as a marketing tool on their site.
Nice.
You can create different types and kind of drill down on them a little differently.
And is that like easy plug and play, like CSS, JavaScript stuff that they can just pop in?
Yeah, exactly. So you essentially, let's see. Yep, you just copy and paste this into your site.
Really easy.
Yeah, we really focus on customer or like user experience whenever we're building our site and doing our tools. So we've also got this tool that isn't, this is a test account, so it won't work, but you can manage your hours of operation as a business on like Facebook and Google and a bunch of other sites. So, if you type in a website and you type in a business and you want to see if they're open, and it shows you their hours of operation. So businesses can manage that within our platform as well. And so,
interesting. So it's almost,
sorry, go ahead.
Like you've got review management, but almost like some web presence management as well. That's really helpful.
Yeah. And then the last thing kind of like tells that story too a little bit more, but this is a tool called Local Search Rank. And essentially it shows you your zone of influence per specific keywords relevant to your business. So this is a sushi shop in, or a sushi restaurant in Utah. It should, and on Google, if you type in a restaurant, or let's say you type in restaurant, you have like 3 restaurants that come up in Google, and shows you suggested places to go, which are very relevant to your geolocation. So that's what this data is showing here, is like your placement in that rank. And so, this sushi restaurant, if you type in sushi, Bluefin Sushi in Layton, Utah is the first result in like this area. Second, you always want to be top 3. Interesting kind of like cutoff here. But then, these are areas of opportunity that you're not ranking very well in. And then, you're even worse here. And we also can like go back and see how that changes over time, which is really interesting. Looks like it's not there, changed a lot. So this will show you like opportunity to increase your marketing spend, or your placements or anything like that, in different regions that are, interesting to you. And you can add keywords here. This is, they're not even right here, but what I think is kind of cool. Let's see if I can find a Chicago restaurant. All right, so let's look at Gibson Steak in Chicago. So when we first built this tool, we were like, why the heck is there data over the lake? Yeah. This doesn't make any sense. And what it is, it's people that are on their boats coming over into Chicago, and they're looking for, a good steak restaurant in this instance. And so, there's probably isn't a whole like great opportunity for Gibson's to be like, well, we've really got to improve our presence just east of Waukegan. But, it's interesting data. So this is
some more surf and turf options, right?
yeah, exactly. So you can kind of break down what the rank looks like in these different hexes and see like how you're performing against your competition, which is pretty cool. And again, like kind of goes back to, we manage and help businesses manage their online reputation, and not just necessarily reviews, even though, our business is ReviewTrackers. So
yeah,
from there, really cool. We usually get a good amount of engagement and conversation in the interview through that. And, it helps us understand how product interested engineers are. And that isn't, a requirement for us, but it's something that, can be a little telling on, how involved and what sort of value, again, like from, a startup perspective, you can convey your value in more than one way. And, sometimes engineers that are really interested in the product and engaged and want to make sure the best thing is getting built for the customer. That's another aspect that can be valuable to businesses.
We mentioned ownership earlier, right? I feel like there's some engineers are perfectly fine saying, you write a ticket, I'll build it, and that's the end of it, right? Versus like actively thinking about, okay, well, how can we take this and do something more like this ticket? What can we do after this to actually help the business? So it's interesting.
Yeah.
I had two things I was curious about. You think you showed like Google results for like Google Maps results of what people are showing up on. Is it just Google results, or is it all different types of search engines that you're pulling?
In that visualization of the map, that is just using Google. But that's something we're thinking about to do differently in the future. But an interesting fact is, I'd say in the last like 5 years, Google has drastically taken over the market in review content.
Oh,
and so, now it used to be like around 20%, and now it's closer to like 50%. And so we've tried to like make, Google first. We've got Google integration built in our application, along with, a couple other review sources, but that was one of our first to put in place.
Yeah. What are the other big players? Is it like Yelp and stuff like that, or?
Yelp, Facebook, TripAdvisor. And then we aggregate around 100 review sources, and some of them are like really niche and ones that we've actually had contractual agreements set up per specific customer. And so like, there's, I don't know, like a mattress store in Australia that like wants data from this forum, or something, and then we'll pull that data in, but you have to pay for that if you want it. So we've gone down that route before, but that's kind of a really rare thing that happens, and also expensive because it's a long-term investment for us to maintain.
Sure. You also mentioned basically being able to see different competitors and how they kind of rank compared to your own business. Is that something where you're I guess my question is, are you able to pull this data from Google? Like, does Google have APIs where they'll feed you all this data so you can pull this data for any restaurant? And then obviously these people care about their individual restaurant, but you're able to get the same data on their competitors as their restaurant?
So that one is a little bit different because we're pulling data from 100 different review sources, and it's a little easier to contextualize if it's not like represented visually and like a map. So with that competitor tool that I mentioned, we do pull from a number of other sources. So I guess it's a more encompassing view. Let me see if I can pull that up for you again real quick. But yeah, here we go. So this is an example. So we're showing, this is a brewery in Chicago, and we have competitors that can be suggested, or competitors that you can manually add in yourself. So this is showing like a suggested competitor to Beguile Brewing in Chicago. You see how they're performing on Google versus the business that you care about. And then I live in Southwest Michigan, so I added some Southwest Michigan breweries here. So I approved a couple different bars that I added in, and it's showing how they're comparing as well.
Yeah.
So
interesting. Yeah. So you can almost like manually add some things are being pulled. So
yep. So we try to even go down into the keywords on the competitor level as well, and see what you're doing well as a business and that your competitors are or are not. And so it's you can get pretty deep into the data, which I think engages a lot of the engineers through the conversation.
Yeah, that's very cool. And this may be too much inside baseball, but do you pay for this data from various different companies, or just I don't know exactly how this works? Like with Google, are they offering this data freely through APIs, or is it something that you're paying for?
So we've got a mix of like partnerships and also just data that we're aggregating through like, different scraping methodologies.
Mm-hmm.
We do all of that in-house, but there are partnerships that we've agreed on that have different terms, whether we're paying for the data, or that, they're getting data and we're getting data, or that, they can sell their customers some of our data. It just depends, partnership by partnership. And, we have someone specifically in our business that focuses just on data partnerships.
Sure. That seems like a big job. It's cool. Oh, well, thank you for indulging my questions. These are a really interesting platform. Something when I used to run a recruiting firm that got reviews to varying degrees of good to terrible, it would have been nice to have. Right?
Yeah. If it's a one location business, it's only like $60 on our platform per month. So it could help.
Yeah. I wish I would have known that too. Cool. Would that be, obviously there's some time for questions, but would that be the tail end or anything else we'd usually cover in that interview?
No. So at the end of the interview, I will just like make sure that compensation expectations align. So I'll ask that. And then something that I always say in conjunction with the question, because some people are like, if I say something, this is the offer I'm going to get, and I want to not, put myself in a hole I can't get out of. So, and this is true. What I look for in the answer of your compensation ask is just like the minimum of what we need to hold the candidate accountable to. Mm-hmm. And there's been, I'd say it happens 40% of the time where the person like way outperforms their ask, and then we'll give them like sometimes a significant amount more than they're asking compensation. But then, it happens the other way too, where, they may have a higher expectation and then, we don't end up moving toward an offer. And so I just make that clear whenever I'm asking for it. And like, this isn't going to be your final offer. This is just what we're minimally holding you accountable to through the process. And so, there's that. And then we can hire, I will affirm that the person is eligible to work for us. So we can hire currently in Canada and the US. Thanks to InMoment, we can hire into Canada now without, a TN type visa. So, that's something else that I confirm is that we don't need to do a sponsorship, because if we do need to go through an H-1B or something like that, that does add, it does take away from the budget for the role. It's it's sometimes up to 10 grand for that. So, and then also a very long process. So those are, so that would wrap up the interview. And then, from there, we would, make a decision whether to move forward with the code challenge or not.
Great. Well, I think that's insightful. And I really like that modeling or demoing the product. I think that's a big difference from the typical, half-hour call where sometimes a couple of days later you barely remember it, right? Versus like, oh, I actually saw something, right? That I can be like, oh, I remember this review platform, right? So
yeah,
cool.
Yeah. I didn't go into quite like full depth, but I think, like you said, people are like, oh, I was just thinking you pulled in reviews and there was like a list of reviews that you looked at, and that's what ReviewTrackers was. And if it's a good amount of engagement too, then from my perspective, I want them to complete the code challenge and not drop off. Yeah. And so, that makes us a little more sticky through the process.
Cool. Well, anything else to add, or do you want to plug ReviewTrackers and roles you're hiring for the near future?
Sure. Yeah. So, currently we're around 30 engineers, and we're looking to hire one product manager and 2 to 3 more engineers at this time. Next year, our budget is going to open again, and I can see another like 10 to 20 that we're going to hire. I'm looking for a very senior backend, specifically in Ruby and Postgres experience. And then I'm looking for a senior front end as well. On the PM side, which, to be clear, doesn't report into me, it reports into our product organization. We're looking for a product manager to join us that will be managing our NLP focused product that we're going to be building. So I think that's an interesting role. And the front end role that we're hiring will also be joining that team as well. So building visualizations around keywords and categories. And we're also like looking into what we can do with photos that come through reviews as well, and applying machine learning to that. So, there's some interesting things in these positions, and hoping that we find someone soon to fill those roles.
Well, those do sound really cool. I mean, that sounds like the type of stuff that people want to work on, right? Something actually like pretty exciting. So cool. Well, thank you so much. I will let you know as soon as this is out. It's been a blast.
Yeah, it's been a good time. Thanks for the invite, and hope you have a great weekend.
You too.
Thank you for watching the technical interview portion of the Professional Technical Interviewee. If you want to tackle this interview question, you can find it at github.com/professional-technical-interviewee. New episodes are released on the first 4 Thursdays of each month. Find us on YouTube at youtube.com/Dorsett, or on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. Make sure you subscribe so you don't miss out on new episodes. And remember, keep practicing.